If you want to see every new feature in iOS 26, I got you covered. Now that the public beta is out, I'm going to share 100 plus new features in iOS 26, including all the changes in messages, know how long it'll take to charge your phone, podcasts, new controls for AirPods. I'm going to show you everything new in CarPlay, Apple Music, Maps, Wallet, and more. Remember, this is the public beta, so there's still going to be some bugs, but the full release will be coming this fall. We'll get back into the lock screen for a second, and of course we have liquid glass design, but the first real feature I want to show you is the new contextual menu. So when you select text, whether it's in Notes or any other app, in iOS 18 and previous, you had to scroll all the way to the right to get to different actions. Well, now when you tap that right arrow, you get a vertically scrolling contextual menu with nice little icons showing all the different actions, including the share button in case you want to run a shortcut. Going back to the lock screen, you can now adjust the clock to have that glassy look, and it can be overlaid underneath parts of your images. When you go into customize a lock screen, you can tap on the clock. You have the different font differences and size, but you can also drag this handle here on the right-hand side, make it much larger. It will pop over a layer in the picture when it thinks it's obscuring too much of the time. Also on the lock screen, when you use one of your photos, you can create a spatial scene. Now, depending on the image, you'll have differing effects, but I used this picture, created a spatial scene, and then when you're moving your phone around, you have that really cool 3D parallax effect. I've seen some photos look really good with this spatial scene. Lastly, on the lock screen, Apple Music is going to have full screen album art and animated imagery on that lock screen. Now going to the home screen, when you tap and hold to customize it, go to customize, and not only do you have the tinted effect like from last year, but you can make your icons completely clear. And even in the clear mode, you have light, dark, or you can choose auto, where it'll go between light and dark depending on the time of day and whether you enter dark mode. Also, along with the redesign, there are some new wallpapers that you can add. Swipe over and add a new lock screen. And if you scroll down to the iOS section, you get some new iOS 26 colors and shades. And again, you can make that clock super big if you'd like. Next, let's jump into some apps. And the first one is the camera. The camera app has been completely redesigned, giving it a more streamlined look. Just switch between photo and video down here at the bottom. And then a lot of the controls are now under this 6-dot menu. When you tap the 6-dot menu, now you get live photo, photographic styles, you can set exposure, change your filter, flash, and more. Now, if you wanted to access things like portrait mode, you can swipe over and then you'll get the panoramic and portrait mode. And if you swipe to the left of video, then you get things like time lapse and slow-mo. But a new addition, and this is really welcome, is when you're shooting video, previously if you wanted to change the frame rate or resolution, you had to jump all the way into settings. But now you can actually just tap this menu and adjust 24, 30, or 60 frames per second, 4K and HD right here from the camera app. Lastly, for the camera, if you jump into the settings, go down to camera and then scroll all the way down, there's a new lens cleaning hints. So if it sees that your camera is a little fuzzy, it's going to send you a notification to clean the camera lens. Side note, toggles have been redesigned with iOS 26 to be this more elongated look. To be honest, I prefer the circles. But anyway, staying here in the settings app, let's go up to battery. And we actually get a new setting here under power mode. You can turn on adaptive power. When you toggle this on, it will try to adjust to your usage and give you the longest battery life. That might mean turning down the brightness a little more than it would, slowing down processes, things like that. But you also get to see how long it's going to take to charge. So if I plug in my phone to charge, in a few seconds, I should get an estimate about how long it's going to take to fully charge my device. And there you go, it says 7 minutes to 80%. And if I actually go to settings and then battery, here it's going to tell me 7-minute charge to 80% and then 48 minutes to get all the way to 100%. Next, let's go over to messages because there are a ton of new features here. Once you're in a conversation, when you tap the name or the group name here at the top, you have a whole different view here for conversations. You actually have scrollable tabs here where you can go see what photos were sent between you and this other person, what documents were shared, links, locations, and more. Really like this redesign. And now you can add background images to one-on-one or group conversations. You can choose from some of the stock imagery, you have suggestions here, and you can also use Image Playground to generate an image to use for a conversation. We'll go with the Aurora Borealis here, go with a nice purple look, and now that background is here in your conversation. In a group message, that will apply to everyone. Next, text selection is vastly improved, so if you want to select a part of a message, once you tap and hold on it, rather than just having to copy the entire message, now in this contextual menu, you can choose the select option and then drag the handles up and down to select just a specific part of the message. Search has also been improved, plus it's moved down here to the bottom. And if you search for a term or a phrase, you're going to see results and they're going to be separated by category as well. Also, we get live translation here in messages. Not only can you choose to translate an individual message, you can also choose to translate an entire conversation. You can choose what you want to translate from, and you'll be able to see the translations of messages in conversations, both the original language and your language, all in each bubble. You can also create polls, both for group messages and, strangely, for one-on-one conversations. So maybe just you and your significant other are trying to figure out what to have for dinner. You'll see when someone votes, and then that choice extends to show that's the winner. Also, we're going to get typing indicators even in group messages, so you can see when multiple people are typing. Next, when you have a group message, if there's numbers you don't recognize, jump into the conversation details and you'll be able to quickly add to contacts any numbers that you don't already have. You'll also be able to send or request Apple Cash in group messages. So when you go to the Apple Cash menu, you can choose an amount and send or request, and then choose which contact in the group you want to send that to. Also, there's enhanced protection for spam text messages. When you tap this menu in the top right, you can quickly go between messages, unknown senders, and even see the spam box. And when you're in your unknown senders box for messages and you trash something, delete and report spam, which is different than previously it said report junk, that's going to flag that number as spam for Apple. And lastly, if you ever wanted to know what an emoji was called, now when you tap it here on the emoji keyboard, you'll actually see the description or name of that emoji quickly in that search bar. Tap an emoji, you'll see the name here. Now, one app that didn't get any big upgrades this year is Mail. So upgrade it a different way using today's sponsor, SaneBox. Now, SaneBox sponsored this video, but I also pay for SaneBox annually because it is that worth it. SaneBox is how you take control of your inbox, eliminate spam, and get organized. It works with every email client. I actually use it with Fastmail, my iCloud email, and a Gmail account. And it has incredible features like email deep clean, saying black hole, actually snoozing your mail because the built-in mail app still doesn't do that, and more. Let me show you 3 key features that I use every day with SaneBox. Now, the biggest feature really happens behind the scenes is that I don't have to worry about spam email anymore. Number 2, the stock mail app still doesn't have an actual snooze feature. This remind me feature will still keep an email in your inbox. So instead, what I do is I'll swipe on an email, and then SaneBox has these folders like Sane Tomorrow, Sane Next Month, or Sane Next Week. So if I want this email to disappear from my inbox, but reappear tomorrow, I just move it to that SaneBox folder, and I have confidence it will be there tomorrow for me to deal with. And feature number 3 is called Sane Black Hole. Let's say there's a sender that you just never want to see email from again. Well, I can move that message to Sane Black Hole, and now that tells SaneBox whenever I get an email from that contact, never put it in any folder, I just don't want to see it. But I have paid for personally and used SaneBox for over a year, and it has completely changed my email experience. So try SaneBox today by going to try.sanebox.com/beardfm. You get a discount when you use my link, and that's down in the description, and it will completely transform and better your email experience. My thanks to SaneBox for sponsoring this video. Next, there are 5 new features for AirPods. If you go into the AirPods settings once you're on iOS 26, you can scroll down and you'll see a feature for camera remote. We're going to test that in a second. Also, conversation awareness will now recognize your name. So if you're in noise canceling and someone says your name, it'll switch to transparency for a moment so you can hear the conversation. If you wear your AirPods to sleep, you can toggle this on and it will pause media when it detects that you've fallen asleep, so you don't miss whatever you're listening to. Also, if you get into your car with AirPods playing, it should stay in your ears rather than switching to the car to keep your listening uninterrupted. But let's go back up and turn on the camera remote setting. You can do it with either a press or press and hold to either take a picture or start recording video. So let's test it out. So here we are in the camera app. I have my AirPods in. I'm gonna tap one of the AirPods and we started video recording. So now you can do it without even touching your phone if it's on a tripod or far away from you. And the last feature is AirPods now support studio quality audio recording. So I'm going to switch to the built-in microphone on the AirPods. I didn't see a setting to enable for this, so I assume it's just on by default. So we'll see how this sounds here in the video. This is the audio from the AirPods recorded with an iPhone 16e. Click the AirPods once again and it will stop recording. All right, let's go back home and take a look at Control Center. Now when you tap and hold on controls like Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, you can quickly switch between Wi-Fi networks and even jump into Wi-Fi settings from that contextual menu. Also nice for Bluetooth devices where you can just quickly switch here. And there's better AirPlay volume controls now in Control Center. So if you go down to the music player and you jump into the AirPlay settings, now in this speaker view, you'll actually be able to adjust volume for speakers even if you're not AirPlaying to them directly, but those speakers are playing something. So you can adjust the volumes on those speakers right here from this AirPlay menu. Next, the podcast app got some new features and some redesigns. Now when you're in an episode, the episode artwork is actually going to be edge to edge rather than in a smaller square right here at the top. And once you start playing an episode, which this is my tech podcast, Primary Technology, you should definitely subscribe, links below. You can also tap on the playback speed right here. If you swipe this over and go all the way to the rabbit, you now have 3x, which is kind of wild. But you also have an enhanced dialogue option, so it will bring the voices of that podcast forward if it's hard to understand them. Also, let me know down in the comments, what's your podcast playback speed? I'm a 1 to 1.5x kind of guy. Next, if you didn't like the photo redesign in iOS 18, well, it gets another redesign here in iOS 26. Now we do get some tab views here. You can go from the full library with all your photos, that's the default view, to the collections view, which is more like what iOS 18 had, and you can still customize this. Back on the library view, there is that filter setting here at the top if you want to be able to hide any screenshots or just see a specific kind of media. And in the collections view, if you scroll all the way down, you can reorder the collections. So if you want albums up at the top or maybe media types, you can drag to reorder these. And hopefully that makes for faster access to what you're trying to get to. And then also here in photos, you can make any of your images a spatial scene. So when you're looking at an image like this, just tap this little symbol in the upper right. It will scan it, and then once it makes it a spatial scene, you can move your phone around and you'll see that depth effect in your photo. Next, let's go to Safari, and now when you add a website or really anything to your home screen, it will become like a web app, meaning you can navigate it without all the other Safari interface around. I'll choose Add to Home Screen. Well, it's supposed to make it a web app, but it's freezing on the beta, so I'll have to show you that when the full release comes out this fall. Get subscribed. A new gesture, not only can you swipe between tabs by swiping on the address bar, but if you just swipe up on the address bar, that'll bring you back to the tab view for quick access. Also, if you're watching a video or if a tab is playing sound, just like on the Mac, you'll now see the little sound symbol down here in the address bar, and if you tap on the symbol, you can choose to mute this tab here in Safari. Which, by the way, if you want to see the top 15 features in macOS Tahoe, like Spotlight and the really powerful control center, I'll link that video above and down in the description. Next, if we actually go to the clock, when we set an alarm, you can actually jump in and adjust how long the snooze duration will be. So if you snooze a lot, like I do, you can choose if you want that just a few minutes or all the way up to 15 minutes. Next, let's go over to the Passwords app. And the new feature here is password history. So if you've changed a password recently or even multiple times, when you're looking at that entry, you can tap View History and then see the previous passwords here. Tap to expand it, and if you want, you can clear the history here at the top right as well. Also, when you log into websites, if you have those two-factor codes going to third-party apps like Google Voice or Gmail, you'll actually get those 6-digit codes in the autofill above your keyboard now. Next, music got some new features. If we jump into the music settings and go down to song transitions, you'll see auto mix is now an option, and it's a little better than the straight crossfade. So that's the new auto mix feature. It's on by default. You see a splash screen when you first open music when you update. Next, when you're listening to music in another language, you'll actually see the translation right here under the lyrics. You can tap here to turn that on or off, but nice to be able to see that right here as it's going. Also, if you go to the library tab, you can now pin individual playlists, like my Hans Zimmer playlist here, or albums and even songs here at the top. So if you want quick access, you can pin them or just tap and hold, and then you can unpin them, kind of like in Messages. And finally, if you wanted to add an Apple Music widget to your home screen, that now includes those pin sections. So if you go to Music, you can choose the recently played, recommendations, or you can choose just to have your pins in the widget. Next, this feature was announced with the iPad, but it's also here on the iPhone, which is local capture. Now you have to add this control to Control Center before you can actually use it. So you tap and hold a Control Center, add control, and then search for local capture. Add that here in Control Center. Then when you're in a third-party app or a FaceTime call, you can choose to record the local camera and microphone as a file on your device that you can then send to someone. And this might be a way you can record a podcast with your iPhone or iPad. So if you're FaceTiming another person, once you're in the call, you can swipe down to Control Center, start the local capture, and you'll see you get the 3-second countdown. It's automatically recording now. Then you can stop the recording manually here in Control Center, or when you end the FaceTime call, that recording will stop automatically as well. And then you'll see that that local capture is saved to the Files app. And then that's just your side of the conversation, both video and audio. And if you're going to use that local capture, one of the things you might want to do is choose your audio input, which is another new feature in iOS 26. So now if you're back in FaceTime or a third-party app like Riverside, which is a better way to record things like podcasts from your phone, swipe down to the Control Center and then tap the app here highlighted in green, and you get that new input control right here. So if you connect a USB microphone like the Shure MV7 Plus, I can select that microphone as my audio input. That works both on the iPhone and on the iPad. You can also do things like enable voice isolation while you're recording, which helps cut down on background noise, echo, and things like that. Also, live translation, like I showed you in Messages, it's also available here in FaceTime. So you can tap the three dots. Live captions actually shows words on screen no matter the language, but live translation, and now you can see that translation live right here in FaceTime. Also, the FaceTime app has been redesigned in general. You can even do things like filter up here in the top right and big conversation cards for the contacts that you FaceTime. Next, the phone app has some big updates. First, you can screen incoming calls, and you want to make sure to enable this setting in the phone settings. With this enabled, unknown numbers will actually be asked for their name and what the call is about, and then you can choose whether or not to actually take the call. And also detect call waiting, which will enable hold assist. Also, if you call a number where you're going to be on hold and there's hold music, hold assist will wait for you and then notify you when it's time to pick up. The phone app in general also gets a brand new design. In that first calls tab, you see conversations and recent calls here at the top, and then the list of recents down here at the bottom. And when you tap and hold on a conversation, you get some options like to message, call, mail, and more. And when you're on just a normal phone call, not even a FaceTime call, you get more options here under the More menu, including things like recording the call that gets saved and transcribed into Apple Notes. You have the live translation again. You can start the hold assist right here. And coming this fall, you'll even be able to do things like share play over the phone. And lastly, related to phone, you can now create ringtones without the GarageBand app. You can even do something like record a voice memo on your phone or just save an audio file to the Files app. And then in the share menu, there's a new use as ringtone option that you can just choose for any audio file, and then you can use it as your ringtone. Oh yeah! So let's say you have an audio file saved here in the Files app, you can just tap and hold, hit the share button, and then use as ringtone is an option right here. Also, while we're here in the Files app, just like on the iPad, you can now choose to open with certain applications for files. So when you tap and hold on the file, you'll see the new Open With option here in the contextual menu, and you can choose third-party apps from this menu. Next, a couple updates to reminders. Now, whenever you have text that might look like to-dos, you can select that text, and then from the share sheet, here in the contextual menu, I'll go down to share. You can actually share these directly to reminders, and then Apple Intelligence will actually parse these into different to-dos. So here you'll see it actually linked the Apple Note because I shared it from Apple Notes, but here are individual tasks that I can choose to include. So it actually treats the note as the main task and then what I had selected as the subtasks, but you can select text anywhere in an email or text message, and Apple Intelligence will automatically pull out those to-dos. Reminders can also auto-categorize using Apple Intelligence, and there's a new Control Center action, and you can even set the action button to add a reminder. So here in Control Center, I'll add a control, search for reminders, and there's the new reminders action. Here in Control Center, you can just tap it, quickly create a reminder in this overlay, and again, you can also use that for the action button. Going back to Apple Notes, there's now options to export and even import as Markdown. So if we hit the share button right here, you'll see export Markdown as an option. You can import as Markdown as well. And another new feature is not only do you have an undo button, but if you tap and hold on the undo arrow, you actually get a redo option now as well. So I can undo and tap and hold, and then redo changes. Next, the Journal app has gotten a bunch of new features. Not only is the app now available on iPad and Mac, but you can create multiple journals. So if you want one for work or business, you can have those separate here in the Journal app. There's also a map view, which will show you your journal entries on a map. You can see the entries here. It looks really nice when you have many entries in different places. And when you're looking at your entries, you can finally export all your entries to back them up to a cloud service or just save them locally on your computer. Plus, like I mentioned, you now have the Journal app on iPad and Mac, which if you want to see my features on the newest iPadOS 26 features, check out that video above and it's linked in the description. Next, let's talk about some CarPlay features. So if you have CarPlay in your car, this is what you're going to see. You can do the glassy icons like you would see on your iPhone. Also, to the far left, you now have a widget view. And here you can add widgets like you would see in Standby. That includes HomeKit style widgets, music, podcasts, and more. Unfortunately, you can't manage the widgets on the CarPlay screen. For that, you need to go to the settings on your iPhone. You can search for CarPlay and then connect to your specific CarPlay device. There's a new widgets category, and here you can reorder whatever widgets. There is a maximum of 5. You can't seem to add more than that. But if you delete one, now you can tap to add widget. You'll see battery life, although you already see your iPhone battery on the CarPlay screen. But this does include third-party app widgets as well. So if you want to use something like Pocket Cast, you can do that, Apple News widgets, Google Maps, and more. Next, there's a new compact calling UI here at the bottom, so you can accept or deny a call, and then it lives down here and doesn't block your whole screen when you're on it. You also see the call right up here in green, and you can tap that and go to the full screen call menu. Also, there's now message tapbacks and pins here in CarPlay, and you'll see that option to send a tapback. You can also have pin conversations up here at the top of messages. You can also enable live activities here in CarPlay, and if you take screenshots even with CarPlay connected, you won't get an additional screenshot of the CarPlay screen here in your photo library. Next, visual intelligence has gotten a lot more useful in iOS 26. You can basically trigger it just by taking a screenshot. Then if you take a screenshot, if there are any dates in what you captured, you can actually add those dates proactively to the calendar. It'll even pull information from the screenshot. You have a title, location, date, and time. You can edit it and then create that event. I used to have shortcuts just for this, but now it's built in with visual intelligence. You can also do things like reverse Google image search or ask ChatGPT. So maybe you have an image here and you want to know what you're looking at. Well, I can even crop that image, do a reverse image search here in Google, and I can see what results Google has, or I can just ask ChatGPT something about the image. What am I looking at? And ChatGPT will tell me what it is. And if you take a screenshot and maybe there's a phone number or address in the image, you'll actually see that pre-filled option here, and you can just tap to call it. Well, let's say you get sent a picture. Maybe it's a book with some printed text. Well, when you take a screenshot now, if you have Apple Intelligence, you can even choose to summarize the text that's in the picture, and you get that summary right there. Also, if you go into the markup tools here for a screenshot, tap the plus icon down here, they've added the loop magnifier back into screenshot markup tools. A welcome addition and return to this feature. You can change how big you want the loop to be, move it around the screenshot. This way you can highlight a part of it for someone if you're going to send it off. Apple Maps also has some new features like being able to see places you visited. So if you're on a trip and you want to remember what were those restaurants we ate at, you can see that here in Maps now. You can also choose to keep visits for 3 months, a year, or forever. I like keeping stuff forever. I do that with my messages too. One of the screenshot tool, when you take a screenshot in something like Maps or of a website in Safari, if you go to the full page view, it'll remove all that kind of cruft of the UI and you can get a clean image of the map or whatever else you took a screenshot of. Since we're in Maps, Maps has a bunch of new features, plus a redesign. So here, like if you wanted to navigate somewhere, website, call, and menu is here at the top of the location info, and you'll see the navigate button down here at the bottom right. And then as you navigate to places, whether it's work or places you go regularly, there will be preferred routes that it will begin to learn and suggest those to you. Also, if it knows your commute because you navigate there pretty often, and if there's some traffic or some other obstacle, it will actually give you an alternate route preemptively in a notification on your home screen. And for those visited places, you can go to the Places area here in Maps. You'll see visited places right here, and they'll start populating once you actually get directions, search for places, maybe even order from it here in Maps. Also, sharing locations with Maps, that's been improved. So when I tap share, maybe I want to text it to somebody. You know, it gets shorter links, especially if you're sending it to Android users or someone gets it on their computer. And Maps is now in the browser. So even if someone doesn't have an iPhone, they can open that location and see the info in their browser. Back here in Messages, if you use Genmoji, again, you need Apple Intelligence on your iPhone to do this, you can actually combine emoji to create new things. So you can mix and match, even personalize Genmoji. So let's do something like, let's get this emoji, then I'll search for a podcast microphone here. And now Genmoji will combine these two, and when their powers combine, I have a combo Genmoji here, and I can use it as an emoji, and it will live here in the emoji keyboard. I can also go back into the emoji window. Let me choose that new Genmoji that I created. And if you scroll to the right, you also have themes, different expressions, even costumes, accessories, and you can really go nuts and customize your Genmoji. You can also type down here at the bottom, and it will do its best to make what you're trying. And you can really create some fun little characters. You can also create emojis from people and photos. You can even customize the appearance, change the hairstyle, facial hair, and after choosing those personal attributes, there's an emoji based on me. And I'm trying to prepare everyone, probably going bald soon, just throwing that out there. Now, speaking of generating images, Image Playground has gotten more useful because you can just use ChatGPT in here. You can do your personalized image again, generate Genmoji on your photos, but you can also just choose ChatGPT. There's new styles here, or you can just choose any style. And now you can just ask ChatGPT, like you would in the ChatGPT app, generate an image of a medieval knight riding a polar bear into battle. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You can also create Genmoji directly here in Image Playgrounds based on your prompt or on pictures of people that you upload. Is that a 6-legged polar bear? It's pretty epic, I'll be honest. You can also just take straight images and apply the different styles. You can also customize the appearance for photos of other people, including that hairstyle, facial hair, eyewear, things like that. And Image Playgrounds also lives in messages when you want to have a different background for your conversation or just in your one-on-one conversations. So you can go to the Image Playground option here in Messages, Medieval Knight Riding on Polar Bear Battle. Not exactly what I was looking for. Apparently you can't use the ChatGPT part in the message background generation. But there's our polar bear behind the messages. Another new feature is actually here in focus modes. Let's say you have a focus set up, you got your people, your home screens. Well, you can go down to focus mode filters and you can actually choose to only accept calls from certain SIM cards based on a focus mode. So if you have multiple lines on your phone, eSIM and or regular SIM, you can choose to block one or the other in a focus mode. Next, the Wallet app is getting a bunch of new features as well. You should be able to add a digital ID, not just for driver's licenses, which are available in these states, but you should be able to do it using a passport. It's not available just yet. I imagine that's coming this fall. There's been an update to boarding passes, so you actually get more information on those boarding passes when they're in Wallet. Depending on rewards programs here in Wallet, you can actually pay with rewards directly from your phone, rather than have to have another card or tell them your information. And you can have order tracking right here in Wallet, even for orders you didn't buy using Apple Pay or using the Shop app. So I'll be curious how that tracking works. Get subscribed. Once it's on my main iPhone, we'll see what it does. Next, the Preview app has come to iPhone and iPad. You can create new PDFs either with an empty image, scanning a document, even with multiple pages. Just a nice way to manage your PDFs. You have all the markup tools that you would be accustomed to. You get your page thumbnail views here. Some more tools for like inserting a blank page or inserting from a file to combine PDFs. So nice to have the Preview app here on iPhone. Also, there's the new Games app coming in iOS 26. If you play games with friends, you should be able to see that collaboration here. And I like that you can browse all the arcade games and search for arcade games here in a dedicated place. I always encourage my kids to do Apple Arcade games as opposed to others that might have ads or in-app purchases, so nice to have that all in one place. Plus, you can actually use a USB-C cable to pair a DualSense controller to your iPhone with iOS 26. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about shortcuts. I've done multiple videos like my Siri bot video, Apple Intelligence shortcuts. I'll link one of those videos above, and I'll put the links down in the description. But we have all the new Apple Intelligence actions here in Shortcuts. So if you go down to Apple Intelligence, we have Open Visual Intelligence. You can create images right here in a shortcut. And when you go into Style, you can also choose any style via ChatGPT. So a nice way to be able to generate images without even opening Image Playgrounds or ChatGPT. You can just do it here from Shortcuts. You also get writing tools actions like adjusting the tone of text, making a list from text. There's a dedicated summarize text action, which would be great. You can use that with PDFs in a shortcut input or for things like long emails and notes. And the most powerful action, which is use model. This basically lets you add a custom prompt, and you can choose the private cloud compute, on device, or even the ChatGPT model, all from this built-in action. And even if you just use ChatGPT with this action, rather than the built-in app, this is way more reliable. You don't have to have recently opened the ChatGPT app for this to work. So here's an iPhone running iOS 26. I'll run my Siri bot. I'll ask it for a one-paragraph summary of the Olympic Games. It's going to ask Apple Intelligence, and there's the response using private cloud compute. I'm going to ask to continue the conversation. I'm going to say write a 500-word blog post about this, and there we have the blog post. And now I'll end the conversation, and we'll see it's going to take all those responses and put it in an Apple Note for us. So I've been using this action a ton. Again, videos on that linked above and in the description. Screen Time gets a couple new features like communication requests. So if one of your kids gets a message or is in a group message and wants to be able to add a contact to their phone, they can request it right there in the messages, and you should be able to approve that more easily. And there's more age options, so for things like 13 and 15 plus, rather than jumping from like 12 to 17 in the age restrictions. All right, a couple new accessibility settings. Here under the Read and Speak, you can actually turn on Accessibility Reader. And then maybe you're on a website, you can go into Reader mode, and you can bring it over into Accessibility Reader. You can listen to the article right here, and you can customize Accessibility Reader, different colors, different fonts. You can hide the audio controls. And you can access that even in the control center right here. Also in the accessibility settings, in the main section, go all the way down to the bottom, and you can actually share accessibility settings and even sync them to iCloud. So if you have all the settings on your device and you want to share that with someone else, or just have these sync between your iPhone, iPad, and Mac, you can do that now as well. Also down in the audio and visual settings here, if you go to background sounds, these have been here before, but we actually have more sounds now in iOS 26. Even things like airplane, boat, and bus, rain on roof, And finally, when you connect to captive Wi-Fi networks like in a hotel room, you have to put in your room number and things like that. Those settings should sync between your Apple devices, so you only have to do that once, like on your iPhone, and then your iPad and Mac should automatically connect. All right, those were over 100 new features in iOS 26. Again, the public beta is out right now. Install at your own risk. It is still a little buggy. It'll be improved over the summer, but the full release will be coming this fall. If you want to see the updates to iPadOS 26 or macOS Tahoe, I'll put my videos on those right up here. But get subscribed to the channel and hit that like button. If you have any questions, or let me know your podcast listening speed, or if I should finally shave my head, let me know down in the comments. And more videos coming both on the features of the software, I have some exciting announcement about accessories for iPhone coming very soon, and a ton more. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.